welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. In the studio with us at this time is the CEO of Teach for Nigeria, an organization focused on developing a movement of leaders across the nation who are committed to putting an end to educational inequity. Folawe Omikunle, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, you're welcome. What do you do at Teach for Nigeria? I guess it's an NGO.
Yes.
So what exactly do you do? What is the concept all about?
So Teach for Nigeria is a non-profit, as you've said. It's a non-governmental organization focused on addressing educational inequity. At Teach for Nigeria, we believe that every child, regardless of where they come from, whether rich, whether poor, every child should have access to quality education and an excellent education that allows them to fulfill their God-given potential. But we also understand that to really achieve that and to really address that, it requires a mammoth task. It's such an ambitious thing to believe that every child, whether poor, can really attain their full potential. And so because we recognize that, we've adapted a model. And what this model does is it's two-pronged. And first, it requires the most outstanding young leaders to go into schools where these children are, to teach them and ensure that learning outcomes are improved. But beyond there, we understand that to really solve educational inequity, we require leaders. It rises and falls on leadership. And we need leadership across all levels to ensure that every child, regardless of where they come from, truly receive the education that they desire. And so that's like the summary and concept.
I understand that, the outline of the principle, the framework, but how does it work out in real terms? Who are your partners? How do you do it? Do you work with schools? Do you have your own teachers? What is the real specifics?
So basically, the approach is we're looking for outstanding leaders. We're looking for young Nigerians who are passionate, who are committed, who are driven, and who are also exceptional. These young guys like myself and several other of them who are already teaching in these schools, we look for those guys to go into schools and teach for 2 years. Now, it has to be a high-need school, so they're underserved schools. So they're recruited, and then they're placed to teach in these schools. To drive transformative teaching experiences and learning experience for the kids. And so we partner with government. So the schools that we're talking of, the kids that we're trying to reach, majority of them go to public schools. We know what is happening in those schools. I'm sure you've heard the stats. About 58% of kids who are in primary 6 in majority of our government schools are not able to read and write, whether in their own native language or in English language. So we have literacy issues in this school. You have numeracy issues in this school. So we put them in those schools to drive transformative impact, but also for them to learn and understand what the issues are. For the longest time in Nigeria and for the longest time in Africa, we focused on quick solutions, quick fixes. The issue that we're addressing is so complex and is so systemic that there is no way that we're going to address it by just, band-aid solutions. And so what Teach for Nigeria is really trying to do is to address it from the root. What we've been doing, I'm going to use an analogy of a tree. We have a tree that is dead and that has been dried up. And what we're doing with it is beautifying it with lights and putting artificial leaves on it just so that it still looks good. But we're not addressing the root issues. The fact that we need to have leaders who are rewriting our curriculum and who understand that. The fact that we have people who are in charge of policy, people who are in charge of the budget, who understand why it's so important not to have 7% allocated to education, but we need to have 26% and above allocated to education. We need to understand why we cannot continue to reduce the bar of qualification for how teachers get into the colleges of education or get into an education program at the university. We need to understand that we need to find our best and brightest to go in. And just because it's so interwoven and so complex, we cannot solve it by just having a great minister for education. We need to have leaders across different sectors. And so Teach for Nigeria works in partnership with government. We work in partnership with different stakeholders who understand that we really need to work collectively to drive the efforts towards quality education for all children.
So these teachers you talk about, which you refer to as fellows,
yes.
You said they teach for 2 years. What happens after 2 years? And then I know you're in Lagos, Ogun, and Kaduna recently. How do you select the schools? What is the criteria?
So what happens with a lot of the young people who are teaching, actually about 80% of them probably never even thought that they would go into a school to teach. Some of them quit their jobs and decided to do the fellowship program. But I can tell you that through the experience, through the exposure, the insight they have now, I have some of our fellows who are saying to me, I studied political science, and so we recruit graduates from diverse backgrounds. I studied political science, but I understand now why I need to focus and go and do a master's in education policy, because there is a science behind that she needs to understand to be able to make impact post 5-10 years from now. There's someone who, for example, had been working in a school for 1.5 years, and she realized that here in Southwest Nigeria, there were still the girl child and the girl student who was coming to school and missing school because she was on her menstrual cycle, but had no knowledge of what was happening with her body. And so they started to see how that was actually affecting learning outcomes. So the idea is that majority of these guys are going to be social entrepreneurs, social innovators after the 2-year experience. Some of them are going to remain in teaching, and Teach for Nigeria ensures that for the ones who come into the program who do not have education background, we have a partnership with a university where they run their PM, professional diploma in education, so that if they wanted to transition and remain as teachers, there is that opportunity. And there's several of them that we need to go into the private sector as well, the business sector. And the reason also is because private sector and corporate Nigeria needs to understand the role that they also need to play in funding education, in supporting education. So the idea is they are going to be the ones across different sectors, and the skills they've gained during the 2 years. I was saying to a fellow, you've gone and worked in a school, you've engaged with a difficult head teacher, you've engaged with maybe some difficult colleagues. You've worked in some of the most underserved and difficult environments, and you're able to transform your teaching and learning experience, and you leave that environment, the skills that you've acquired, because it's such an experiential leadership development program.
Well, let me ask you, what is the motivation? Why will anybody want to go and teach for 2 years? Because I'm trying to process the information. It's beginning to sound like another National Youth Service, some kind of volunteer program. Why will any young person say, I will teach for 2 years, we teach for Nigeria, instead of going to look directly for more lucrative jobs?
So I will share with you some of the things that the fellows, we currently have 216 of them on our program. The first year when we started this, I remember trying to launch Teach for Nigeria, and some of the conversations that we had was, you're never going to find young Nigerians, outstanding Nigerians, who are going to give up 2 years of their lives to teach in underserved schools or in in our public schools. And that was what was said. But in our first year when we launched this, we had over 12,000 Nigerians who applied to the program. I know that there is an unemployment issue here, but what I also learned from that was young Nigerians were tired of the narrative. They were tired, and they're looking for a platform where they can contribute and do more and give back to our nation. In our second year, we had over 58,000 applications, and we only recruited 172. As I speak with you, we've had to initiate a quota because last year our website kept crashing, so we had to initiate a daily quota to reduce the number of applications that we're able to receive, just so that we're able to screen through it. So the truth is, people buy into the vision. A number of the fellows who are on the program understand their own role, they understand their need and the role that they can play towards contributing to this equitable education for all. And so it's that vision alignment, it's that mission alignment, and it's that deep understanding that they can do it. And also, I would like to say, Teach for Nigeria model is not just new to Nigeria. This model exists in over 49 countries. It's been done to Teach for America is 26 years. It's in China, it's in Bangladesh. And so they also understand that this is what young people like them, their peers are equally doing, and they're seeing how they're contributing to transforming the education system.
Quickly, like I said earlier, you're in Lagos, Ogun, and recently in Kaduna. But I'm sure you would like to be in almost every state, because I can only imagine the scale of underserved schools that we have. I mean, recently we saw the case of Success that revealed a lot in Delta State. So what exactly do you need to move this forward, I mean, across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country?
So, and what are the challenges you have faced so far, or that you have seen in the system? The
biggest challenge, that's the education system, you mean?
Yes.
So infrastructure is one challenge. The policies we have is another one. the quality of teachers and the training available to teachers, the remuneration of teachers, funding. I mean, the issues there's several of them. Lack of learning aids and teaching materials. I mean, those are some of those issues. But I would say for our organization as one, like, the biggest challenge is fundraising, it's funding. How do you fund a program as this, where you're finding outstanding individuals to teach, like who pays their salaries, etc. Exactly. And so one of the things that I say is Teach for Nigeria will only work with willing leadership. We will only work with government who understand that, you know, they want to reform education in their different states. So the states that we're in, the 2 states partner with us, and we have MOUs with them to ensure that they pay part of the stipend of the fellows. And so we will only work with states where we're able to ensure that the government also supports the work that we're doing. And this cannot be done alone, as we work in partnership with the Ministry of Education, with the SUBEB, and with all other stakeholders, local government, head teachers, and existing teachers in the different schools.
Well, it sounds very interesting. I would have loved to ask you, why are you doing this? I mean, you could have done something else.
Absolutely.
You could have worked in corporate Nigeria, or set up, as it is now, you know, a boutique or a spa, which is very popular, you know, in Lagos today.
Absolutely.
So what drives you?
I'm just going to check real quick how I got into this and how the trajectory of my life sort of changed because of this experience. And my background is international law and diplomacy, and I did my master's in diplomatic studies because I really wanted to become a diplomat. I started off my career as a school administrator in a school somewhere in Lekki. And the experience there was when this little girl, 4 years old, was brought to the school and enrolled. And this girl couldn't speak a word of English. It was like Darren. I mean, we all know how Lekki is, and the kids they come from privileged backgrounds. And this kid, in comparison to the other kids who were there, was like day and night. And what I experienced within 6 months, where this girl's life literally transformed, was what led me to this work. Like, I'm driving home from Lekki to Lukeju on the mainland, and each time I saw the kids who were begging for alms or who were trying to clean my windscreen, I'll just picture them in my school, you know, as this little girl called Uduamaka. And it just wasn't enough for me to remain in that school, managing 60 to 100 kids, where there were more kids and millions of them who didn't have access to quality education. And that's where it all started. So in 2015, when the decision to join Teach for Nigeria to help launch with the co-founders who started this idea, it was a no-brainer for me. So I quit a full-time paid employment and joined this. And one of the things that I say recently is, more than anything, now it's more urgent for us to address this issue around educational inequity.
Thank you very much, Folawe.
Yeah.
You know, very engaging, and we wish you all the best as you try to address the challenge of inequality in the education sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Folawe Omikunle CEO, Teach for Nigeria. Well, it's not time for a short break on the Money Show. When we return, we'll have Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni join us to review top stories on today's newspapers. Stay tuned.